Hey folks, and welcome to Typology, the show in which we explore the mystery of the human personality through the lens of the Enneagram. My name is Anthony Skinner, producer of the show, and we are thrilled to have you here with us today. Listen, we have yet another great guest for you. I'm talking about platinum selling, Grammy award winning, Dove award winning, Billboard Music award winning, singer-songwriter, frontman for the group, MercyMe's, writer of the song I Can Only Imagine, and the Lionsgate Roadside Attractions box office hit of the same name, and more importantly, an all-around, down-to-earth, salt of the earth, good guy. Talking about Bart Millard is in the house with us today. Hey, we're excited to have him here, excited to have you here with us. Bart used to identify as an Enneagram 7. He now thinks he is an Enneagram 6, so we're glad you're here to travel down the wormhole with us. That's it for me, Anthony Skinner, and now without any further ado, here is the host of our show, Ian Cron.
Bart Millard, welcome to Typology.
Thanks for having me finally.
Yeah, man. As we were saying earlier, it's hard to believe that we have lived in pretty much the same town for 11 years, have so many mutual friends, Randy and Katie Williams especially, and we have never met before.
Yeah, it is very hard to believe. I've known you from the Enneagram stuff long before I realized that some of your dearest friends are some of our dearest friends. And so it's finally get to meet you.
Well, who knows? We probably have some scuttlebutt that we've been told about each other. We'll find out if it comes out in the wash, and then we can blame Randy and Katie for it somewhere down the road. So you self-identify as an Enneagram 6, the loyalist. And I'm just curious, what led you to conclude that you were a 6?
Well, from the time that I kind of learned the whole Enneagram thing and what it was, I was 100% certain I was a 7, and and I'm not sure exactly how it all works, but I still believe that, man, there's definitely a 7 there. I tried all the questions and all that stuff, and if I took it 4 times, I would get close results, but 4 different results. Because then, and I don't know if it's my trust issues as a 6, but it's like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to answer this as a 20-year-old or answer this as a 48-year-old, and I would get different answers because I was like, I felt more like a 7 back then when the whole world was ahead of me. And then what's funny is talking to friends about it and having all these conversations, I would read just the descriptions of different ones, because they're not going to sit and take a test over dinner. And over several months of reading through that, every time I would read through what a 6 was, I kind of got this weird feeling oh man, I think I'm more of a 6 than I am, probably a 6 with 7 wing. And when I realized, yeah, I definitely am, I was depressed for a while. I was kind of bummed out because I guess the whole Peter Pan side of 7 was so exciting and stuff. And maybe it's more of what I would like to be seen as, but there is definitely a motivation of fear and a mutual friend, Katie, being a 6, definitely kind of made me realize, oh yeah, I'm 100% a 6. Just the little things of it's there are issues of, trust when no matter who I meet at first, but then the second we break through that, I would take a bullet for them, man, to a fault almost. I'm in no matter what. It's just hard. It takes a little time to get to that point. And so my guard is always up. And yeah. And so as much as I've kind of read through it and stuff, it's it just kind of, it resonated more than anything else. And there's definitely a 7 wing, but 6 is kind of home base, if you will.
Yeah. One of the things I tell people is that in terms of wings, you can have what's called a heavy wing. You can have a moderate wing, or you can have a light wing. And if you have a heavy wing, sometimes, this was my experience, I'm a 4 with a 3 wing, but my 3 wing is so heavy that it took me a long time to realize that I was a 4, because I'd be vacillating back and forth, and but what sealed it for me was the unconscious motivation, right? I definitely identified with the unconscious motivation of the 4 more than the 3. So the 6's unconscious motivation is a need to feel safe, secure, and supported world that feels chaotic, unpredictable, and threatening.
Yeah.
Right? And for the seven would be the need to avoid psychological and emotional pain through constantly living in this future of incredible escapades and adventures, always planning fun, always thinking about the next fun thing we're going to do, and, et cetera, et cetera. So if, in a way, if the 6 copes with fear through a kind of pessimism sometimes, the 7 deals with fear through optimism. So it's the same anxiety, it's just 2 different management systems. So of those 2, which sounds more like you?
Presently the 6, and that's kind of why it's hard to answer, because it's like I feel like the 7 part of me or whatever has almost gotten me to this point. Like there was a motivation, and the reason I took the risk and started a band and did all this crazy stuff that people thought there's no way, find something to fall back on, and I resonated with that for so long, and then like I said, like I don't know enough about to know like if I guess it's a thing, but like currently, and I would even say with all the success we've had and people that you would consider friends that end up just wanting something from you, I went from an extrovert to an absolute introvert. Like I kind of shut myself in, and so like that's when it's hard to answer. Like, yeah, I feel like most of my life there was a 7 like this, just everything was about wonder and nothing to stop me, to where now it's like you hit a point to where this 6 is like rearing its head like crazy. It's even the motivation is different, and there is this sense of wanting to be accepted and be safe and stuff like that. But I don't know, just kind of built these weird kind of walls, if that makes sense, and just and became incredibly more loyal to the people that I do consider dear friends, and don't take it for granted like I probably did in the past. But at the same time, it just takes a little bit to kind of let people that I'm just meeting in, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, that's really interesting. I remember hearing Eugene Peterson say something that was sort of brought me, sort of threw me back on my heels. Someone asked him, what's the worst thing that can happen to the human soul? And without blinking, he went, celebrity.
I agree with that. It's like people that win the lottery. It's like you don't hear many success stories and that kind of stuff. And it's
no, you don't.
Yeah.
No, you don't. And I think you've described some of the trauma of celebrity, right? Which is, who are my friends? Why does this person want to hang with me? What's the real motivation? Do they want a selfie, or do they want to know me?
Right.
Is it on and on and on? What are the motivations these people have? You become skeptical and cynical a little bit.
Yeah.
And so who knows? Maybe as we talk, we'll hone in maybe on the 6, or maybe we'll leave the conversation with let's take a look at 7.
Yeah. That's, I don't know if it's like, it switches, like that's the whole thing with like, what is it truly? Because like I could say at 20, when I'm not married with kids, like I approach things differently, to where there's just so much more that factors in, and just I don't know which it is. I know I feel like a 6, and it's kind of it's like I feel like a 6 but want to be a 7. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. I like to say, I think I said this on the road back to you, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I'd like to be a Stephen Colbert 7, but I'm a Bob Dylan 4 without the talent.
Yeah, I felt the same way. Like we were in Hawaii doing a show randomly, and I was reading around this whole table stuff, and it hit me like the more I read about a 6, I was like, whatever was in the past, like right now, everything about this hits me hard. And I was genuinely bummed out, like in a weird way. And then I've come to like embrace it more, and it doesn't bum me out anymore. It's just it's almost like, how was I duped for a year thinking that I was a 7, as if like there's no part of me it's a 7 all of a sudden, is the way I was acting. And but yeah, it's but in the same way, kind of understanding that has kind of helped me get it to a probably healthier place than I've ever been in my life. Just kind of, it's like you said, it's like when you start to understand this, and it's like, I mean, I remember reading like the 6s, whatever the app is or whatever, where it says like, how to deal with me as a 6. And even reading those, I was like, holy cow, like it was all like revolutionary to me. Just never looked at it that way.
Yeah. And that self-knowledge, as you just were alluding to, that the acquisition of that kind of self-knowledge can have a revolutionary effect on your life. It's like, oh, this explains so much.
Right.
And it really, I hope what it does for people too is it elicits a lot of self-compassion. And the reason I say that is that I also believe that your type, the type that we adopt, this way that we show up for the world, is in part a response to very early trauma.
Yeah.
Just is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's partly disposition, temperament, genetics. It's just, some people come in the world more anxious than others. Some people come in the world more depressive than others, et cetera. That having children.
Yeah.
And so, but to some meaningful degree, it's also like, how did I cope with trauma? Did I become someone fixated on security and support and safety? Did I kind of retreat into a place where, as a 7, I became so future oriented and thinking about fun and happiness to escape painful feelings? Do you see how this could just be trauma driven?
Yeah, no question. Yeah. And I think for me, it for sure is just I've had enough of, like we all have issues growing up with, daddy issues, stuff like that. And you talk about the 6, looking for acceptance or whatever. That's definitely been a huge motivation with everything I've done. Just having a dad that had a massive amount of potential, like as far as being a football player and stuff, and it all fell through, and living with a bitter man that, like, so bitter to the point, my dad was had a chance to play pro football, but back then you got your 4-year degree, and then you went to, this is the 60s. It wasn't a high paying job, and you definitely finished college. You weren't drafting early. And he ended up quitting. He went to SMU. He quit school early because of either an injury or something like that. And found out like 10 years later, he stayed in touch with the team, that Vince Lombardi's Packers were looking at him as soon as he graduated. Didn't find out until it was way past. And this weird bitterness, like I was named after Bart Starr out of sarcasm, not out of honor. Like just out of a fight that my mom and dad had, that he decided, I want to name him Bart Starr. And it was like this weird anger of, just so I don't forget what could have been. And it wasn't in an honoring way. And just, he was a different person then. And so, yeah, so there's always been this sense of, the kid that tried football, but I was never as good as him, never worked out, and found out I was able to sing. And it didn't matter what the thing was. It was like, even though my dad's saying, don't chase your dreams, get a 9-to-5 job, it's not worth it. Deep down, I was like, this is everything that he wanted. And so nothing was going to stop me, because in my own head, that was the way to please him. That was what was going to make him proud. Even when he fought me most of the way and said, you're crazy, don't do it, I was like, no, I know. And there's no way I want to be him, and say, what if the rest of my life? And so yeah, that's always been a part of it. And, yeah, and there's definitely some escapism. Just my dad was abusive early in my life, and until his life completely changed. And so that kind of escape that goes along with a 7 was definitely a coping mechanism, to say the least. I had no clue what any of this was back then, but I could see like it. And there's a weird way there's an affection towards a 7, because I feel like a 7, that part of it almost saved my life, if that makes sense. Like it got me through so much. The reason I have a vivid imagination, that's where I'd go. That was my security blanket. And, and then my whole childhood, young adult life was that. But then it's like, there was a moment in my adult life where, went to grief counseling with my wife that led into kind of tapping into my childhood with the way that I respond to things and how I'm a father and a husband. And I think that's when I started to get healthy. And that's when I was kind of, I don't know if I could ever see that I was potentially a 6. And then the healthier I got, realized, oh, okay, if we're being honest, this is probably more of the motivation than just I'm Peter Pan the rest of my life. Like there's something deeper here. And yeah. And so, yeah, it's been enlightening. I know, I'm thinking, Jamie George, I go to Journey, and he introduced this to us, a few years ago. And I was just like, what is this? And so, and yeah, just fascinated with it. And yeah, so I think I think I'm a 6. I don't know what a 7, but it's what it feels like.
And that is, I always like it when someone comes on ambivalent. in part because, you know, sometimes people think, oh, this is going to be easy to figure this out. And this is deep, mysterious, complex material. It's not, it's a journey of self-understanding. And like I've told people 100 times, sorry, audience, you know, it took me 10 months and I'm a therapist and a trained Episcopal priest, you know what I mean? And a trained spiritual director. You'd think I'd have gotten in a heartbeat. It's like, no, it's a little bit, it ain't the Myers-Briggs. It's not something you can just stamp out, you know? And I'm glad for that. Because I think people are too complicated to just, you know, throw them in a box fast, you know? Yeah,
that's the hard part. That's kind of, I mean, you were aware more than anything, but it's funny because like it kind of caught on like wildfire, especially in Nashville of all places, you know, and I'm guilty of it at times, but it's funny when you meet people and they're like, oh no, they're an 8. Like, it's like, well, I don't think that's how this is supposed to be used as far as let's label them like, gotcha, you know, that I'm going to steer clear of them or whatever. But I caught myself doing it. And you're right. It's like, it's so easy to like, it's not trying to compartmentalize something so complex into 9 numbers. It's just, it's like, you know, and I, you know, for me, it's been amazing to understand, you know, where people are coming from or, you know, how they resonate, if you will. It changes everything as far as your approach and stuff, man. The whole sleeping at last thing, like, it's so funny when that whole thing, dude, like I told one friend, and it's probably wrong, but I was like, listen to all of them. And the one that wipes you out completely is probably what you are. Cause I can hear the one-on-one and be like, oh, that's beautiful, man. I got to 6 and I was flat on the floor, like in like a million pieces. And my wife being a 9 was like, she loved them all. She resonated and kind of wept as a 6 because she's married because of me. But then she got to 9, it's like she couldn't breathe. And it's one of the most beautiful, from the artwork to everything. It's one of the most beautiful things. And I think I have promoted that album probably more than he has. I'm kidding. Just, I've told everyone about it. Like I'm like, and yeah, and everybody that I know, no matter what number they are, it's like without saying a word, you know, that my friends that are 3s, they hit that 3. The one that was interesting to me, and I'm curious about it, is there anywhere in there that says that, because I feel like 8s push my buttons more than anything else, like as a 6. I don't know if that's a thing or what, but yeah, but then that like they're like, I'll know some people that are, I guess it's safer to say unhealthy 8s that my wife's like, nah, you know, no big deal. And it just drives me crazy. But in that.
So was your dad an 8?
Man, it's a great question.
If you had to guess, I'm just curious.
No, man, I don't think he was. Okay. That's a good question. I've always thought of my dad as more of a 5, but I haven't given it a ton of thought. You know, but I'm, like I said, but he was an abusive man. So, I mean, on any given day I could say, yeah, he was an 8 because I wasn't fond of 8s. Like, it's not really the right answer, but it's like, there is, I don't know what it is about that, you know, I mean, or unless it's just the, yeah, I don't know what it is, but I will say in the fact that sometimes the things 8s will push our buttons is that when I heard that song for 8s, I kind of wept for that too. It's this weird kind of, like, it said something to me, understanding more what a beautiful, healthy 8 is. It almost broke my heart because it's like I've almost kind of written them off as something else, if that makes sense. And
yeah, and that's what you hope the Enneagram does, right? That it not only brings up compassion, but also empathy, right?
Yeah,
for other people, because, you know, we're talking about wounds. Right. And how people have responded to wounds and how they continue to live out of them until they get self-awareness and realize, well, you know, this is, who else could I have been given what I went through? Yeah. And doesn't give me permission to stay in the shadow aspect of my type. I want to grow and become a healthier person. But of course, this is who I became, you know. And I want to ask you a question, though, because I'm asking this of 6s all the time. You know, I feel like right now in the world, we're all 6s. You know what I mean? Like, I think we're all 6s in a way. Right. We are living in a time, I would call this the year of anxiety, you know, COVID, the election, all kinds of stuff happening in the world, the economy, people losing their jobs, et cetera. And I'm just wondering, how have you coped in the year of anxiety as a 6, and being somebody for whom anxiety is like you're Velcro for anxiety?
Well, I'm a phobic 6, not a counterphobic, and so it has been challenging and then numbing all at the same time. Like at some point I check out, like it's too much information. I don't know what's right, what to trust or whatever. And so I will retreat into like the studio, and an album that's supposed to come out a year and a half ago, I've intentionally drug it out to have something to do to take my mind off of it. And so, and so it's been I'd say it's the year of retreat for me is what it feels like. Cause in some ways I'm like, man, the pandemic's actually been a healthy thing for our marriage, and for me being forced to kind of slow down and kind of stay put and stuff. It hasn't been that bad. I'm never one to do that. And so like when you're forced to, I was like, man, this is okay. I could go without putting my hard pants on anytime soon, and so yeah, it's been, in some ways I've kind of checked out, like I don't post anything political. I just don't get involved. I don't,
right.
It's none of it's worth the fight is what it feels like to me. And so, I see people that kind of, are friends that are counterphobics that like, that want to take this stuff on, and man, I'm the most passive. One thing, and not to change that, but the one thing you mentioned with 8 that I couldn't get out of my head was there's a part of me as a lead singer of this band where I kind of have to be a leader and be an 8 at times. And it's a part of my job that I've never super enjoyed as far as like, confronting conflict or disagreeing or whatever. I don't know how much that plays a part of like, it's when I have to play those roles. Like I never meant to be a quote unquote leader, if you will, but when those things fall on me, it's like, oh, it's aggravating, especially when I'm a phobic 6.
So I think there's probably 2 dynamics there. One is to remind people that you contain in you all 9 numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not solely a 6, you're just you're dominant 6. So you could behave like a 4, or you could behave like a 1 in certain areas of your life. You may be a perfectionist. Other areas of your life, you're more of a 7. You know what I mean? It's like you have access to all those energies. It's just that 1 tends to be dominant. And then, so, you can access that 8 side. Here's the difference. Unlike an 8, you have to burn more calories to be confrontational.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes, 100%.
Right. The 8 can get energy from that confrontation.
They almost find joy in it seems like. And that's what drives me crazy.
They can, if they're really unhealthy in particular. Yeah. I think or even if they're healthy, sometimes they just like immediate engagement with people, and they like the juice. They just like the juice. And so it's not even confrontation sometimes, it's just intensity. Yeah. And so I'm a 4, man. I'm in the withdrawing stance. I withdraw from conflict for sure. Like I can do it, but again, I got to burn calories,
right.
Yeah. And so that's definitely, I think, one piece of it for sure, and I would say, here's the trouble with being a 6 in the spotlight. Like, and you tell me if this is true, but this would be sort of iconic 6. 6s typically don't like to be out front. And the reason is, one is they don't like to be scrutinized, and they don't like to be out front because then they're exposed. And if they're too successful, then people are looking at them too closely, and that makes them vulnerable to attack.
Right.
And they're like, they get really squirrely when they're out front. They like being encouraged or affirmed, just not too much. So I guess one question I would have for you is, how's that celebrity working out for a 6?
Well, it's interesting because like that holds true in a little different way as far as like our big joke is like, I'm the most unlikely front man or lead singer of a band. Like I'm out of shape. I'm 12 feet taller than most artists, it feels like. And like, man, we spent so much of our career, like, you know, doing shows as like a Toby Mac or these guys, they're doing backflips and they're, you know, and I literally stand at my mic and then walk to my water bottle, come back. That's it. Like, I'm not that entertaining. And there's a part of me that fits right in that. Like I'm not going to jump through hoops. I refuse to do any of that stuff to quote unquote, if that's what it takes to entertain, I'm out. And so that definitely holds true. The one thing that's interesting for me is I've done it for so long that I've found this weird comfort. Like it would be easier to sing in front of 10,000 people than to sit in a room with one of you guys and do this, because even though there's 10,000 people, no one will interrupt me or can get to me on stage. And so I find myself being a million times more vulnerable setting up a song or on stage than I would one-on-one a lot of times, because it's very ironic to say I feel safer there than anywhere else, because of course there's people out there, can't see them because of spotlights, but they're not going to go, yes, but, or ever pry into me. I have complete control to say what I want to say and dictate the narrative. And so, you know, healthy or not, it's like, it's become like a safe place for me. But on the entertainment side and just being a lead singer, it's like there's a very cynical side to me of like, whatever I do will immediately come across insincere. And so, you know, as far as all the antics, nobody wants to see a guy my size try to do a high kick, but you know, that's what it feels. That's what it feels like. That's what goes through my head during a whole show is like, you know, and so.
No, but now you've got me seeing you doing a high kick, which is like, you're killing me right now.
And there'll be like, I'll do it to make the band laugh, but I could never do it with a straight face. Like, this is what they want. Oh my gosh, that mortifies me to think like that. And so I get up there. When I was a kid, my parents divorced when I was 3 and I lived with my dad. My dad wouldn't come home from work till like 6. So when I get out of school, I'd walk to our church that kind of raised me, and I'd go in the sanctuary and I'd play on the piano by myself because I loved how it echoed and sing. And one day my pastor saw me through like the side door and I was kind of embarrassed, and he just walked up and he said, man, he goes, if you can figure out what you're doing now, and he meant like, if you can figure out a way to like peel your chest open and let people see your heart, they'll follow you anywhere. And that's been a part of me. I mean, I've held on that for so long that it's almost the point is like, man, I'm just here to sing. Like, I'm not doing any backflips. I'm not, you know, it's, you know, it to a very almost sarcastic level, if you will. And so, but, you know, I wouldn't change any of that, but it's a weird, the more successful we've gotten, the more I've kind of retreated to, you know, I have a handful of dear friends that, you know, include, and, you know, the band, some of my best friends in the world, but dear friends outside of what I do. And I would lay my life down for them. But it's like, you know, I'm the guy when they're like, hey, we got to ramp this thing up. Let's start doing shows again. I'm the one that's like, oh, do we need to? Are we good? Can't you like cut expenses back? We can keep this going. Cause I love being alone in the studio making music. And yeah.
Well, you know, the focus of attention, you know, every type has a focus of attention. So let's say you're a 1. When you walk into a room, your attention immediately migrates toward the mistakes. Like, where's the disorder? What requires ordering, let's say. If you're a 4 on the Enneagram, my attention immediately goes toward what's missing. Not what's mistaken, but what's missing, right? That's sort of a letdown. It's like, oh, that's not the ideal that I was hoping for, you know, or anticipating. I could go through all the numbers and do it, but the focus of attention for 6s is what could go wrong and how do I prepare?
Yep.
Right. Yep. And I'm just wondering, are you a worst case scenario thinker?
Yep. Absolutely. I'm telling you, you know, on the Sleeping at Last song, like there's probably some obvious ones that I could see why you cried. I cried when he talks about being on a plane looking for the exit row, you know, and like preparing, you know, for worse. That it wrecked me in the first verse, because I was like, my gosh, my whole life is you should just sneak in on some of our band meetings, because they're like this, and I'm like, but we have to prepare for the worst. What if this happens? What if this? And they're like, okay. And, and once I'm convinced, I'm in, but it's like, I have to go through it all. That part drives me crazy, but I do it all the time. Like buying a car is a beat down for me. Like it's like the 6 and the 6 or the 7 wing or whatever. It's like, I analyze everything. I think everyone's trying to screw me. Like we built a house, the sweetest man on the planet. He has never done anything wrong. And if I've got to call him to say, hey man, we've got a door jam that's stuck or whatever, it'll take me a couple of hours because in my head, I'm ready for the fight. There's never been a fight. He's never done anything but been there immediately. But every time I believe, it's like, this is where he got me. He totally got me. He's going to put in I go there every time and it drives me crazy.
Yeah, like you're talking there about the sort of the natural suspiciousness that 8s have or 6s have of other people. It's like other people have a hidden agenda. It's like, oh, maybe he got a cheaper door than the one I ordered, and and then
100%.
Is that an agenda? And then on top of that, there you're already planning and preparing in your head for the worst case, which is I'm going to have an argument with this guy, and it's going to be really. And then, of course, how many of these things actually happen? When was the last time you needed to know in reality where the exit was on the airplane?
Right.
You never, right? But it's always ramping up for the worst.
Then as a phobic, I end up avoiding the phone call altogether. It's like I talk myself out of it, or I'm in the car going, how dare you, sir? I'm ready. And then I finally do run into, I'm like, sweetest guy on the planet. I had nothing to worry about. It's like right. You talk about burning calories. I burn calories an hour before the phone call.
Yes, totally. I totally get that. And if you ever get a chance, listen to Sarah the Barge's interview with me on 6s. And she talks about, I don't even go up to first class when I'm upgraded because they die first when the plane goes down. Like the statistical averages are greater that you will die in first class versus coach. Yeah. And I'm like, let me die in first class.
Yeah. I'm not that bad, but I process. It's so funny when it's like flying, when it's completely out of my control, I can let it go. Like, it's like, I have people that are like, I can't fly. Aren't you freaking out? I'm like, no, man. Like there's no analyzation I can make to change this situation. He's got to fly the plane and I got to get there. So I can let that go. It doesn't consume me. But then little things that do seem like they're in my lap takes a while.
It's so interesting because it seems like the you that you're describing right now, it would have been really hard to, launch the band in those early days, all the things you have to do, and I just wonder, like, I mean, you must have been rocking it as a 7, like leaning into that wing with all the optimism you had to have had. I saw the movie too. Even in the movie, it's sort of depicted as you being super optimistic with a lot of vision moving forward.
Yeah, that's why I say it's a little confusing because looking back as a 6, I was like, there's no reason why this band would happen or whatever. But as a 7, it's always made sense. That's why I kind of thought, oh, totally, that's me. And it's also a part of me going, well, maybe I'm not a fan of the 40-something-year-old me. I really like that 20-year-old. So I'm the 7 or whatever, it's like, and I can see parts of that. And sure, circumstances take place, even the death of my father and success, those things were a huge part of this. It's like, my manager, I was talking to him, and when the movie came out, we took a break afterwards, and our last album came out 2017. This one will come out this year in April. So it's almost about 4 years. And it's a long story ever waited. And I was telling manager, I was like, man, I don't feel like working on the record. Like I didn't want to do it. And it was interesting because he said, well, because in a way you've made it. And I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, well, you almost have to generate, or not fabricate and lying, but create suffering. Like I lament well. And a lot of the songs that mean so much to me are, and I don't really enjoy songwriting because it means I have to go to a place that's painful and hang out for a little bit. I love the result, but it's hard. It takes a while for me to go back there. And he was kind of like, all you've dreamed of is to kind of, not necessarily like I'm dreaming of being successful, but I've dreamed of being accepted, being taken seriously, to be able to support my family. And when all these things kind of hit at a higher point than I ever thought, it's kind of feeling fat at the table. It's like, and for him to say, yeah, he goes, you almost feel like you have to generate some kind of suffering when right now you're not necessarily suffering as much as maybe you have, or or you've tackled a lot of the issues, or you've gotten healthy about them. Oh, it's an interesting approach to, I don't know. It's just, there is a little bit of that to where, I've got dear friends that went through things that probably wouldn't be a huge deal. And I'm sitting here writing 4 songs about it. I was like, oh, he may be right. I'm just looking for something to latch onto to be heartbroken over.
Well, you just need to start writing with Enneagram 4s.
Yes, I have a daughter that's one, and so we hang out a lot.
Yeah, man. You get a 4 in the room. I remember I wrote a song with Stu G, who's a 4, and it was a song for Michael W. Smith, for Smitty, and the two of us were writing this song, and we just wept through the whole write. I mean, just like
man,
like this. And I'm not sure Smitty thought it was all that bad. I mean, but we were like, this is awesome. It's that's 4s working together, man.
It's so funny because I'm typical. Like I always joke that I'm just a sports fan or whatever who happens to sing, and that's kind of where I may hover most of the time. But when I'm writing, my 4 rears its head like crazy. Like I do go there, and that's why it's hard. But it's like I'm not a fan of being wrecked and wearing my heart on my sleeve. But whether it's on stage or writing, it's the most genuine moments that I have.
Yeah.
And so I wrote with Stu G one time, not knowing any of this about him. And we were writing for some Fanny Crosby album or whatever. And so we had her lyrics and we had to make a song out of it. And Stu just starts playing that weepy guitar that he's so good at. Mm-hmm. And we both started crying without writing a word. We're like, oh my God, the guitar.
I know.
Can you imagine where we're going to end up? And it was like,
I know.
He was a 4. I was like, we both had this kindred spirit of like, just, there are things that'll wreck me on a 4 level, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. I'll tell you another person, while we're just dropping names, another person I've written with that is a 4, and the same thing happens to Cindy Morgan. And Cindy is so 4, man. And the two of us get together and it is like a melancholy fest. It is just beautiful. I don't care if the song ever gets cut. I just want to write with her and get all sad for a day and weepy and like get in touch with it. All right. So, 4s typically have issues around authority figures. Mm-hmm. So let me give you a little, sort of a sense of that. Because the phobic 6, for example, looks at authority figures as the source of their security and the source of their safety, right? So they can often ingratiate themselves with authority figures, or they see the authority figure as the person their attention needs to be riveted on, right? Mm-hmm. Now, the counterphobic 6 will look at the same authority figure and it's the opposite, right? It's like the phobic 6 is like, I'm afraid, but that person outside of me is the authority figure and they're going to take care of me. The counterphobic looks at the authority figure and says, if that person so much as, deviates from my, or moves outside of the zone of trust, I'm going to take that sucker down. You know what I mean? Like they get, that's why sometimes they look like 8s. Yeah. And in reality, there's really not 2 different 6s because typically it's on a continuum and people are moving, 6s tend to move more phobic, maybe more counterphobic, and then maybe in the middle. And then, which sort of actually coincides with their natural ambivalence, and this is part of also being 6s in this age of anxiety. I'm not going into politics at all here. I swear to gosh, I'm not. Right. But what I am going to say is, all of us have been focused on authority figures, regardless of whether it's on the left or the right or whatever. All of us are fixated on authority figures. And I guess the question I would have for you is, at what point do you trust one? Or at what, or is that been your experience, whether with teachers or coaches or, I can see where the trauma with your dad as an authority figure could really influence the way that you view it. I mean, are you suspicious of authority figures? Does it take a long time? Just tell me if you have any history in that.
Yeah, I am. Yes, there. If I don't know them, there's definitely a suspicion to authority figures, and there's probably a reason why I don't have a desk job, and I doing something that I'm some kind of in charge of and control of. But it's interesting because this is not, without trying to take any kind of political stance. Like sometimes and maybe it has to do with my dad. Sometimes I will give them the benefit of the doubt if they're just good to me. If they they just seem like good people, and you know, maybe to a fault. And a great example is when Trump just got inaugurated, we got asked to do the presidential prayer breakfast. We actually got asked early on and before it all went down. And so we, at the time, it wasn't as polarizing. We thought, man, whether it's Trump or Hillary in office, if the president asked me to come and be who I am and what I do, I'll 100% do it. You know, it's like, regardless who it is. That was kind of our take on it. And so we ended up going, and of course, you know, Trump's there. And so we had to sit up on this main table on stage, and it was like me and my wife and like Pence and his wife and some other people. And so I had a chance to talk to Mike Pence, like, and without knowing anything about him, especially then, because I just, you know, I pay attention a little bit, but I'm not, you know, super hard. Like I said, I probably shut down or retreat on that stuff. And I thought, man, like, he just was a kind person. And I'm sure maybe most of them are, I don't know, but you know, it's like there was something about him like, man, he's a super kind person, to where I found myself later, if somebody was dogging some of his views, something inside me already thought, he's a good man. Like I found, whether I even knew what his policies were, because I saw him as a good man, I found myself kind of in a weird way, just defending him in my head, if you will. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
and so,
totally.
And so I don't know if that's more of the loyalist trust kind of thing. Like, you know, on the flip side of that, like I know people that just from, say, a political standpoint, just from their policies, they already know they hate someone. And I could never, I don't think there's a part of me that could be like that, regardless of what side it is. You know, I've got friends that are definitely conservative. I'm like, man, I don't know. I never met Obama, but he seemed like a dude I could hang out with, like just a cool guy, you know, that kind of stuff. And it's like, I just don't kind of go one way or the other, if you will, as far as like to where it's like, that's what's crazy about right now is like everything is so polarizing. Never seen anything like it. And but yeah, back to the authority thing. It's like I guess it goes back to that once, whatever it is that has me believe that I can trust them, then it's not, you know, it's not as much of an issue, if that makes sense. You know, I guess I would compare it. Yeah. I mean, like and because that trust also goes both ways, like the president of my record label is an 8. I would consider him a healthy 8 who it's less about, let's just, you know, I know what's right. Let's just skip all the stuff and go straight here. But he becomes that healthy 8 that is looking out for looking out for the other people and, you know, like being a leader is giving them a chance to shine and stuff. And so he hears everything that we say and we do. And I have no problem trusting him kind of running this thing, if you will.
Well, that's good. I you know, some 6s I know, man, when they look back on their history and they have this sort of very ambivalent relationship with authority and authority figures, you know. And
I do on certain levels. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's just, I guess in my thing, like, it's just, I'm trying to think of like, because, you know, our job is different. Like, I don't have a direct boss, if you will, but even authorities like a promoter at a show who, you know, who want, like, if, and I'm not good with like change or when people step into what I'm been brought in to do. Great example. It's kind of petty, but like, we don't really do altar calls or whatever. I mean, we just kind of share what's on our heart and kind of stuff. And man, we did a show it's been a while now, but, and I remember getting there and last minute, they're like, hey, we're going to need you to do an altar call. And man, I blew my lid. Not because I'm anti that, it was because it was change and it was someone stepping in to what I think I do well and saying, I need you to do it differently. And that form of that, I mean, it derailed me so fast. And I was like, absolutely not. No way. Are you kidding me? No, how dare he? And then about 30 minutes later, I calmed down and probably ended up doing it. But it's just like that immediate thing was like this weird speaking into what I think I'm good at, you know, like, or speaking to my strengths like that, I struggle with big time. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, one of the things that's true about 6s is that they like predictability, and they like predictability. They like, typically they like institutions. They like, you know, might be the church. It may be a particular theology. It may be a particular political thing, or they become very loyal to things. Yeah. In part because they're good people, in part because those things represent those institutions or that way of thinking represents security and safety.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe someone stepping in, number one, you're screwing with my predictability here.
Right.
Number two, I don't, I really don't like the authority game that's happening right now. You're blindsiding me. This should have been in the writer. I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
what this
Yeah.
last minute thing, I don't adjust
Yes.
well, and, but what's so funny is talking about authority issues is if you like, I've had things happen in publishing deals and in speaking things, and I've been in a 12-step group for a lot of years, and my sponsor, for drug and alcohol, people with drug and alcohol problems. And my sponsor will say, you're the talent. You don't have to let yourself get pushed around here. You're the talent. I mean, like they rely on you for the money. Right.
Right.
And it's like, I go, I forgot. I thought I was supposed to kind of give in and, what if they don't like me? And, it's like, no, actually, you don't actually have that to do that. You actually have a lot more power in this conversation than you realize. And I have to be reminded of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it sounds like you have the same issue.
Yeah. Yeah. And with the people I trust, like whether it's on the road or whatever, I'll throw that fit and say that I'm the talent, and then not react or respond in the way when push comes to shove, like this passiveness, to where it's like, I usually end up doing it, but I have to in private throw my fit and remind someone in the room who probably doesn't care that I'm the talent, not in a diva way, but just like,
right.
I got to tell myself that, and then I'll step out and not say another word about it. But it is something that I wrestle with. But then there's this passiveness, and maybe that is most of the time being a phobic, to where it's like, you would never know. If I was meeting you, I'd be like, oh, of course we can do that. That'd be great. And I'll go to the dressing room. What is he doing? I'm coming unraveled inside. Why is, but, oh, absolutely. We can do that. Yeah, sure. Yeah. It's, as long as you're happy.
And that's okay. So this is the ingratiating side of the six. So the six is confronted with who they perceive as the authority figure, the person in charge, right? Whether it's the promoter or the record label guy or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And then they can, maybe there's a sort of temporary resistance or immediate resistance, but it's kind of like this anxiety and this sort of self-questioning that sixes do a lot of. There's a lot of self-doubt in the six.
Yep.
And so then they start to vacillate. Was that too much? Was that too little? And then they ingratiate the authority figure because they perceive the authority figure as sort of being the one who's got their safety. You know what I mean? And it's like, I just got to kind of please the authority figure here just to get through this, whatever. So let me ask you a question. Here's a question I ask everybody when they come on the show. Are you in therapy right now?
I am. Not right now. I'm not. No.
Okay.
Well, yes and no. We were in therapy. We were in therapy for about 8 years, my wife and I. And we actually moved to Nashville, I think 7 or 8 years ago. And we did it kind of by video for a while, but it's probably I talk to her about once every 2 or 3 months. Nothing like super consistent.
So
other than right now.
Right. All right. Point taken. So what if you were in therapy now, and if you're willing to share this, like, what's the big presenting issue that you need to work on right now as a six? Like, if you go as deep as you want, but like, what would the presenting problem be that you're like, man, I got to work on this right now?
I would say, the thing I struggle with the most is letting fear consume me. To where it's like, it's always kind of been there, but almost to like a paralyzing extent sometimes, to where it's like, that would be, I know it sounds cliche, but just, for someone who for a living tells people to trust in God and stuff, like I struggle. The fears I have of like, this is not going to work. I'm not in control or whatever. that's been an ongoing struggle, and I have great moments and tough ones, but I would say that's been an ongoing, that, and I think it's kind of like the thing that I wrestled with the most, and it was most transforming for me in the last few years, was kind of getting a better grasp on my identity, and as far as just understanding that what I do is not who I am. And to the point to where, I literally got to point through counseling to where it's like, if the band broke up right now, I would not lose sleep tonight. Like, and so that area of my life is like, it's healthier than I've been, but there are other places where fear is like, my oldest son's a type 1 diabetic, and the hardest part of the pandemic is whenever someone originally said, whatever you do, don't let a diabetic get this. We lived in a different kind of fear. We had friends that are like, it's kind of a joke, I don't wear my mask. I was like, man, I sure hope you're right. I'd love to be that person, but I can't afford it, and to the point where he finally did get COVID over Christmas. It was like, okay, here we go. And just expecting the worst. He had a fever for about 2 hours, and that was it, literally. It was fine. But, and then this bitterness of, could we not have gotten this in March? Because I changed, almost like, and I'm so glad he's better. But then there's also this weird disappointment of, I was ready for the worst. Are you kidding me? Which is an awful thing to think when it's your son. Right. But it's like, we changed everything thinking, I don't know, it's a weird. So yeah, that's it, but the sure. Just being consumed by fear is an ongoing, the ongoing struggle.
I back when I was in treatment, I had a therapist say something to me that blew my mind, and I've never forgotten it. I shared my story with her, and in all of its rawness, and she looked at me with the most compassionate voice. It was just in eyes. When someone kind of locks you into that soft gaze, and it's so caring, it's just so understanding, and it's mesmerizing, right? And she said, I think you've endured enough already, don't you?
Wow.
I just started to weep. I was like, I think you've endured enough already, don't you? And it was this, I think, aren't you tired now?
Yeah.
Isn't it time for something to change here? Because, I had a terrible childhood. I came up with my own treatment plan, if you will. It was a pharmaceutical treatment plan, which was not a particularly good one. Everybody's got one. So I'm not feeling like I'm like particularly screwed up. It's like everybody comes up with their own treatment plan. Right. It could be, it doesn't have to be even an addiction, although very often it is, whether it's, who knows? Anyway, I don't want to go too far into it, but it sounds to me, or I guess let me ask you, what is it that you have endured enough of already that needs to change?
That's a great question. I was waiting for what's my favorite color, but let me,
you don't get this on that show, man.
Yeah. I would say, and that it's I'm hesitant because I still do this for a living, but I don't know. It's probably the celebrity part of it. That's something that I'm not a fan of. Doing shows, like that's just the pandemic. I love doing shows, is work. And I just mean the whole touring thing. Like I said, and maybe that is because since we're capable of any number, the 4 in me could just stay in the studio. And if people just listen to the music, I can just make it and never tour again. I think I'd be content. And it's just all the stuff that goes around it. I just want to sing and make music and I feel this makes sense. And I have an intimate relationship with that 4 part of me, but I just come to visit it once in a while when I write. I'm not one that's looking to watch The Notebook, but
I am. I'm about Manchester by the Sea. I lost it twice.
Oh man, but that's the thing is like I'll even to a point, part of me will make fun of it, but then if it's on when I walk in the room, I'm done. I'm gonna watch it. It's like I'd never sign up for it, but it to me, to get to what a 4 is for me is like burning calories. But when I'm there, it's just a painful yet revealing, intimate, uncomfortably revealing part of me. Mm-hmm. And that's why I have this love affair with making music, man. You talk about like, I have one song that I haven't talking about fear and this, that I have one song that I haven't been able to finish for years, literally have written two half of a verse and that's it. And I remember the first time I wrote it, I just wrote, this fear is very real. It's something I can taste and feel. And I kind of stopped and then just wrote, but so are you. And it wiped me out. Like I fell apart just trying to even say that to where I just pushed it aside. And for about, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, I'll stare at those lyrics and like, I'll finish it one day. And I don't know if there's a part of me that's like, I want to make sure that I truly believe that, or I don't know what it is that stops me. But every time I go there, it is an incredibly emotional, possibly healing. And I don't know, but there's something about it that kind of has held me hostage. There's a truth that almost like that I want to believe in, but not sure if I have those days when I don't know if I do, you know?
Say those lines again for me.
This fear is very real. It's something I can taste and feel, but so are you. And then the next line was, the lies I try to leave relentlessly chase after me, but so do you. And I love them, but it's like, and it says so much. And I'm like, just going to a hooky chorus just feels weird. So I just, it's like, I don't know. And maybe it's really precious to me, that thing. And I just set it aside and the moment will come. And
and you're talking about fear. And I think certainly thematically, that's a 6 thing, but here's the thing. People are always like, again, this is how when people misuse the Enneagram, it's like, oh, he's a 6. He couldn't possibly write about you. No, he must be a 7 because he's running away from fear. He doesn't want to write that song because he's a 7, or it's like, no, man, it's like people are far more complex than that. Stop thinking that's just like this sort of childish like, I got to tell you the truth. I'm going to say something's going to piss some people off, but when I go on Instagram and I see these stupid posts about the Enneagram, it's like, here's the, and what they're doing is stereotyping people. They're not typing, they're stereotyping. And it'll drive me batty because it's like, you don't really know, you don't understand the Enneagram. I mean, I hate to be condescending. I hate to be rude. I hate to be like, act like I'm the master guru. I'm not. I know a lot of people who are smarter at this than I am. But the fact of the matter is when I see that kind of trivialization of human beings, where it's like, oh, what are we going to do? Just bring them down to one goofy stereotype? No. Okay. So you are a dominant 6. Well, you've got 4 dimensions. You've got 7 dimensions. You have trauma, which affects things. Right. You have, all of us do. And so, we have to, nobody is a pure type. Nobody, right? If you have the image of God, if you're a bearer of the image of God, then you have dimensions of all of these types. You are a peacemaker. You are a challenger who cares about justice and power. You are a 7 who cares about joy. You are do you see where I'm going? It's like, so I'm always like with people, be discerning. Stop, just using this thing like a bit of a card trick, that's not what it is, and I hate it. Well, you got a new record coming out in April, you said.
I do. Yes. That's what they tell me. It's I think April 30th is the last I heard. So,
and they're booking dates in September.
Yeah. We're doing a couple of one-offs. We just can't tour till September because every state's different and you've got stuff in a truck and you can't. So there'll be hopefully a handful of shows between now and then, but not a full tour till the fall, Lord willing.
Well, man, I have so enjoyed this. This has been really, really rich. And now I'm going to be really pissed if we don't become friends.
Man, me too. I was like, okay, on the podcast, I need to do dinner with you guys, Randy, Katie. I got more questions. So.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Then you get to meet my 9 wife, who's a rock star, wonderful, self-aware, growing wife.
Yeah, my 9. I don't know if it's true, but I don't know about 9s and 4s, but 9s and 6s work really well together. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, 9s and 4s do real well. I'm the kite, she's the string, is what I always say. You know,
that's awesome.
She keeps me emotionally tethered to the ground. Well, hey man, I know that everybody knows how to find MercyMe, and they know how to find you online. It doesn't take a lot to figure it out, and I'm excited about the new record, and I'm just been one of those conversations that has enlarged me. And so I kind of like put a nice little thing into my day. And so thank you for being a wonderful guest. And let's go to that new Italian restaurant in Franklin, and which I have been to. Okay.
I'm all in. Yes.
All right. I'm going to talk to Randy and Katie. We're going to set it up.
Perfect. Okay. That'd be great.
Right.
I got plenty of time in my hands.
Hey, Typology Tribe, we thank you as always. Let me just send you out with my new outro, if you will, my new sign off, which is this prayer that I pray for the world, which is, may you have peace, may you have joy, may you have love, may you have healing, and may you have rest. Until next time.